Hi, I'm Kartik. I'm here to talk about how we are changing the world of data operations in fields like statistical process control. This is with the help of our window processor node that's exclusively available on the Prescient Designer. It's an incredibly simple but very useful node. So we will be talking about how to process an incoming stream of data using this window processor node. And there are two ways to process the incoming stream of data. That is either in a windowed mode or in an instantaneous mode. The windowed mode itself has two more modes, which is point based and time based. So point based basically means that you have a set number of points that is treated as the window size, and time based is basically the points in your window are based on a period of time that you have selected earlier on. The modes for processing on top of these windows that are available are: number one is aggregate. This is just a compilation, that is an array of the incoming data points being outputted. You have the average, that is the average of the entire window. The decimate, which is you have the most recent possible value in that window. Then you have the minimum maximum, that is the minimum or the maximum of the window. The RMS, which is root mean squared, so great for detecting errors in that window. Standard deviation of that entire window. So over here, you're basically producing only one output point for an entire window. In the instantaneous mode, you're producing one output point per input point, and it uses the historical data as its entire back for data. So average, that's basically the running average over the entire data stream. Then you have the maximum. You find out the maximum of the entire data stream till now. Minimum, similar to that. Then you have pass through, where you have a point going as it is, there's no processing happening on that, followed by RMS, that is the root mean squared of that entire window. And then you have the standard deviation, which is the standard deviation of the entire data stream till now, until this point. So all of this is actually happening on the Prescient Designer, and this is a low-code platform that runs Node-RED. You have a bunch of open source libraries available for that. Node-RED itself is open source, and it can be used to solve the hardest problems in a modular and extremely efficient manner. The platform permits evolution of projects, and a solution built on this one is basically one of the easiest ways of future-proofing it, as you will see in this tutorial that will come up next on how to use the window processor node. So let's look at the Prescient Designer now. This is the designer. And to install the window processor node, we have to go into the hamburger menu and the manage palette. In here you have the install tab, in which you can search for window processor, which is available right here. It's installed in my case. You just have to hit this button to install it for you. Following this, so here's the window processor node, and now I'm going to use some data source examples, which are a bunch of inject nodes. So these are just as a proxy for real data sources. They can be anything: edge devices, databases, and the Prescient Designer makes it incredibly easy to communicate with any of those. And the debug node is going to be a data source, just to see what's happening. And let's connect these. How easy it is to connect modules in here. And yeah, so let's just put in some default value here as the payload, a number 1, number 2, number 3. And all we have to do is deploy this. So this is the process of deploying. What you can see on the right is the debug window. And now let's see the window processor. Now these are all the possible options, that is windowed or instantaneous, as we saw earlier. Let's go with window in this one. Then you have point or time based. Points is the number of points you want to consider. Now let's see. Let's make the window size 4. And average. And all of that, so that we have clean. Deploy. So now there should be an average output for every fourth point with all the four values being averaged. So let's give it four input values. So what we had given it is 1 2 1 2, which basically averages out to 1.5, which can be seen here. You have other modes also available here, like decimate, where you will have only one output value being sent out. So basically, if I pass in a window of 4, only the last value. In this case, if I send in a 111 2, only the 2 will come out. So 1 1 1 2, only the 2 comes out. Maximum, so in this case you have the maximum out of the values 1 2 3 and 2, so 3 should come out. Minimum also works in a similar manner. RMS, that's root mean squared. So in the root mean squared, we basically have 2, 3, 2. That's the RMS of that entire passed in window. Same thing with standard deviation. Now in window, we can also put in time based. So that's all the values that are going in let's say 10 seconds. The operation we want is aggregate. And so this fill in value basically means that if there are no inputs within that particular time period, and so if you have 10 seconds and then another 10 seconds passes and that 10 seconds doesn't have any values being passed into the node, then there is no value being passed out, or you have the last value where you have the last generated value from the node being repeated. So now we have no message as an aggregate. So this should output an array of all the values being passed into it for 10 seconds. So I'm hitting 2 1 2 2 quite a few times. Yeah, so here you can see the array being produced. I pressed it quite a few times, and yeah, so that's the array. You can also have another mode, which is like, all of these work very similar to the previous example. And let's look at instantaneous. So the historical points that I've stored here are 4. So you have a point being produced for every output, with the history being set to the last 4 points. So now, so basically what happens in this, I should probably clarify, is the first 4 points, out of that you have the first 3 points going in a history. So you have since you have no previous history available for those in terms of those 4, you have no points being created here. But after that, then it's a running value. So you have an output for every point, and very similar to the previous system that we saw in Windows, where you have all these other settings which work on the historical window and the only difference is in Instantaneous you have a point for as a running value for every possible input. So yeah, so this is it on the designer front. I hope you like the window processor node. We have a lot of other nodes of our own which are used to solve some very complex tasks. We had the anomaly detection tutorial being shown the last time. And this is very useful in a bunch of industrial settings also, as mentioned. I hope to see you in the next tutorial.